Easter was supposed to feel warm. That's what Linda said when she booked the private room. It'll be good for everyone. Fresh air. Neutral ground. As if geography could fix gravity. As if distance from the city could soften the way people look at you when they've already decided who you are. We drove 40 minutes outside Seattle to that restaurant tucked between pine trees and curated charm. Exposed brick. Linen napkins. White lilies arranged in tall glass cylinders like fragile promises. I paid for the room in advance. Of course I did. I always did. There's a particular humiliation in funding the stage where you'll later be erased. You don't see it coming. You just sign the check. Megan arrived glowing. She had that glow I used to associate with children on Christmas morning. But she wasn't a child. She was 30, polished, controlled, confident in the way corporate success teaches you to be confident. Chin slightly lifted, voice calibrated, smile measured. Director of Brand Strategy. That's what her new title said. I remember when her resume said nothing. I remember Boston. I remember the first tuition invoice, the number so large it sat on my chest like a stone. She cried in the kitchen that night, convinced she'd have to give up her spot because scholarships covered only part of it. Linda paced. David was between opportunities. I logged into my account without drama. Transferred the money. I told her, focus on school. That was my role. Remove obstacles. Quietly. When her portfolio looked weak, I stayed up until midnight reviewing drafts. When she doubted herself after a failed internship interview, I drove her back to campus and told her rejection was currency. You collect it before success pays out. When she needed introductions in Chicago, I called in favors I had earned over decades. I didn't demand credit. I assumed proximity was enough. At the brunch table, glasses clinked. Silverware tapped porcelain. Someone mentioned the promotion and the room shifted. Attention sharpened like it always does around achievement. David stood first. He always stands first. Tailored suit. Loud laugh. The kind of presence that fills oxygen whether it's deserved or not. He raised his mimosa and began speaking as if he'd been rehearsing for weeks. I always knew she had it in her, he declared. That drive. That instinct. It's in the blood. People laughed approvingly. Someone murmured, proud dad moment. Proud dad. I stared at the condensation sliding down my water glass. David had not attended parent-teacher conferences. He had not co-signed student loans. He had not wired emergency rent when her roommate left mid-semester. He had not spent Sundays dissecting campaign analytics because she didn't understand why her metrics lagged. He appeared at holidays with expensive watches and theatrical toasts. I appeared in the background of everything else. Megan stood up. My heart lifted. It lifted because I thought, foolishly, this is where nuance happens. This is where adulthood corrects childhood myth. She smiled. That same confident, curated smile she uses in boardrooms. I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here, she began. This promotion means more than a title. It means every late night was worth it. Applause. Phones lifted. And I owe it to the man who made me who I am. She turned toward David. The room responded before she even finished the thought. Anticipatory laughter. Warmth. Recognition of a narrative everyone understands. Father and daughter. Legacy confirmed. Then she added lightly, almost playfully, you had nothing to do with this success. Her eyes flicked toward me, barely a second. It was my father who made me who I am. The guests laughed. Not maliciously, just comfortably. The kind of laughter people offer when they believe they're witnessing harmless family teasing. I smiled. My body knows how to perform stability. But inside something gave way. Not explosively. Not dramatically. Cracked the way ice cracks beneath weight. Quietly, decisively, irreversibly. Because she didn't hesitate. She didn't soften it. There was no thank you to everyone who supported me. No acknowledgement of infrastructure. No recognition of the man who signed checks without applause. Just blood. Just lineage. Just the story that was easiest to tell. I looked at Linda, my wife. She adjusted her napkin. That small gesture, that careful smoothing of linen, will stay with me longer than the laughter. because it meant she heard it. She understood it. And she chose not to disturb it. Not even a mild correction. Not even a polite, "We've all supported Megan in different ways." Nothing. In that moment I understood my place. I was not her husband in that room. I was a sponsor. The brunch continued. Plates were cleared. More champagne poured. Megan moved from guest to guest, radiant, retelling stories of her promotion. David basked in proximity to her glow. No one asked about Boston. No one mentioned Chicago. No one referenced the years I worked double contracts to maintain stability during market downturns. I existed at the table, but I did not exist in the narrative. On the drive home, the silence was thick. I waited. I gave Linda space to speak first because I still believed partnership required invitation. Finally, she sighed. "You're taking this too personally. Too personally. As if erasure were an abstract concept." "She's just proud of her father," she continued. "You know how important that is to her." Important. Yes. So was tuition. So were introductions. So were late-night drives and quiet financial rescues. But those are not cinematic moments. They don't photograph well. I asked her softly, "Did it not bother you?" She stared out the window. "It wasn't the time to make it awkward. Not the time. There is never a time," I realized. Because discomfort threatens harmony. And I had become the man expected to absorb discomfort silently to preserve it. That night I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I went into my office and opened the drawer where financial statements lived in tidy folders. I reviewed everything. Joint accounts. Investment portfolios. The seed capital I had set aside for Megan's future business idea. The one she had pitched to me privately months ago. "When I'm ready to launch," she'd said. "I know you'll help." Yes, she knew. Because I always had. I wasn't angry. That surprised me. I was clear. There's a difference. Anger is loud. Clarity is surgical. 3 weeks passed before I filed for divorce. In those weeks I observed. Megan posted photos from Easter with captions about "grateful for my dad." David commented publicly. Linda liked every comment. No one tagged me. I didn't correct it. I didn't need to. The paperwork was methodical. I closed joint accounts. Canceled the investment fund quietly. Reviewed the car lease, Megan's company car. Technically under my credit because her agency required a cosigner during probation. Interesting detail. I contacted a realtor about the house in the Seattle suburbs. My name alone was on the deed. I had insisted years ago. For simplicity. Linda had never objected. Facts are quiet weapons. I never raised my voice. I never staged confrontation. I simply began removing the scaffolding. There is something almost peaceful about withdrawing from a structure that never fully included you. The morning after the papers were filed, I woke before sunrise. I made coffee in the same kitchen where Megan once spread textbooks across the island and cried about midterms. I looked around that house, the furniture I chose, the mortgage I paid, the roof I maintained, and felt no bitterness. Just comprehension. I had mistaken endurance for love. I had mistaken provision for belonging. I had believed that staying, consistently, quietly, reliably, would one day equal recognition. But presence without respect becomes background noise. And I had been background noise for years. Easter brunch didn't create the fracture. It revealed it. The toast didn't wound me. Confirmed what had long been true. I was useful, but I was not claimed. And when a man realizes he is tolerated but not defended, something fundamental shifts. You stop negotiating for space. You reclaim it. I didn't make a scene in that restaurant. I didn't slam a glass down. I didn't walk out. I paid the bill. I tipped generously. I held the door open for everyone as they left. And then, 3 weeks later, I stood up from the table of my own life. Quietly, decisively, without applause. The morning after I filed for divorce, nothing looked different. That's the strange part about collapse. It rarely announces itself with broken glass. It starts with paperwork. Linda was still asleep when I left for my attorney's office. The house was quiet, washed in that pale Seattle light that makes everything look innocent. I remember pausing at the doorway, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking wall clock, the ordinary sounds of a life that believed it was stable. Stability is often just ignorance with good lighting. By noon, signatures were dry. The petition was filed. No drama, no accusations, just a legal acknowledgement that partnership had dissolved long before anyone admitted it. I didn't rush home. Instead, I sat in my car and reviewed numbers. Joint accounts closed. Credit extensions terminated. Investment project canceled. That one lingered in my mind. Megan's idea had been ambitious. A boutique digital strategy firm built on the contacts I had spent 30 years cultivating. I had quietly set aside capital for her launch. Not a loan, a gift, because I believed in continuity, in legacy, in building forward. I called my financial advisor and redirected the funds. No bitterness, just recalibration. Then I reviewed the car lease. Megan's new company vehicle, a sleek German sedan she had proudly posted online the week after her promotion. The agency required a strong cosigner during her probationary period. She had called me then. Just temporary, she'd said. It'll look better if you're on it. I had agreed without hesitation. Temporary is a dangerous word. It often means indefinite until inconvenient. I contacted the leasing company, requested removal. They explained the implications calmly. If she could not independently qualify, the lease would need restructuring, possibly repossession. I thanked them for their professionalism. I didn't threaten. I didn't warn. I simply withdrew. The house went on the market that afternoon. It had always been in my name, a detail Linda once described as practical. I listed it with a realtor who didn't ask personal questions. Within hours, photography was scheduled. The living room, where Megan once rehearsed presentations in front of me, would soon appear online as bright, open-concept family space. Family space. I almost laughed. That evening, Linda found the email confirmation. She stood in the kitchen holding her phone like it had burned her. "What is this?" she asked. Her voice wasn't angry yet, just confused. "The house is listed," I said evenly. "We'll need to coordinate showings." She stared at me as if I'd spoken another language. "Why would you?" "I filed this morning." The silence that followed was thick. She didn't scream. Not at first. She set the phone down slowly, like sudden movement might shatter something fragile. "You're serious?" "Yes." "Over brunch?" she asked, disbelief turning sharp. "Over years," I replied. She paced the kitchen. "You're blowing up everything because Megan made a joke." "It wasn't a joke. It was a toast," she insisted. "People say things." "Yes," I said quietly. "They do." She stopped pacing. "You're punishing her." "No," I answered. "I'm correcting myself." That was the first time she looked afraid. Megan called the next morning. Her tone was brisk at first. "Mom said the house is for sale. What's going on?" I could hear office noise behind her. Keyboards, distant voices. The life she believed she had secured. "I'm restructuring," I said. "What does that even mean?" "It means I'm no longer financing what I'm not part of." She exhaled sharply. "If this is about Easter." "It isn't about Easter," I interrupted. "It's about accuracy." Silence. Then irritation. "You're being dramatic." "No," I said. "I'm being precise." That afternoon, the leasing company contacted her. I know because she called again, this time without composure. "They said you're withdrawing as cosigner. They said I might not qualify on my own." "That's correct. You can't do that." "I can." Her breathing changed. The confident director vanished. "This is my job. My image matters. You know that." "I know I signed a contract. And I know I'm allowed to exit it." "This will look bad. Only if you can't sustain it independently." There it was. The quiet truth neither of us had voiced before. For years, she had leaned on invisible infrastructure. "I thought you supported me," she said finally. "I did," I answered. "Extensively." That word landed heavier than anger. Extensively. Because it implied record, documentation, proof. 3 days later, an offer came in on the house. Above asking. Seattle real estate moves quickly when priced correctly. Linda sat across from me at the dining table reviewing the documents with trembling hands. Where are we supposed to go? You'll have time to arrange housing, I said. The market's strong. You'll be fine. She looked at me with something between betrayal and dawning recognition. You've already detached. No, I replied. I've acknowledged. Megan showed up that evening. No warning. She walked into the house without knocking, the way she always had. Confidence still wrapped around her, but thinner now. They're saying my credit history isn't strong enough alone, she said without greeting. The lease might convert to a higher payment. Or, she swallowed, or they'll take it back. I watched her carefully. This was the first time she looked at me not as background, but as leverage. David said he'd help, she added quickly. He just needs time. Time. Another dangerous word. And your promotion? I asked. It's probationary, she admitted. 6 months performance review. Performance review. Interesting how success reveals its conditions only when support withdraws. She paced the living room, the same living room soon to belong to strangers. You're making everything harder than it needs to be. No, I said calmly. I'm making everything accurate. Accurate? She snapped. You're proving a point. Yes, I answered. That stopped her, because she expected denial, or guilt, or negotiation. Instead, she received confirmation. I was proving a point. Not loudly, not publicly, but definitively. Linda tried to mediate. We can work this out, she insisted. There's no need for extremes. Extremes, I repeated softly. Extreme is being erased in public and told not to take it personally. Megan's jaw tightened. I didn't erase you. You clarified me, I said. She didn't understand at first, so I explained. For years, I believed I was part of your foundation. You corrected that belief. Now I'm adjusting accordingly. Her confidence flickered again. So what, you're just done? Yes. No drama. No raised voice. Just yes. The paperwork reached her agency by the end of the week. Lease restructuring. Cosigner removed. Higher monthly obligation pending credit review. The laughter from Easter did not echo anymore. It had been replaced by phone calls, by meetings, by uncomfortable conversations with HR about financial stability. David promised to handle it. He always promises. A month later, I heard through Linda that his business had encountered legal complications, regulatory scrutiny, cash flow issues. He disappeared as efficiently as he had always appeared. The applause left with him. Megan's probationary review did not go as expected. Leadership requires stability, focus, independence. Stress shows. Cracks widen. Linda asked to meet me in the house one last time before closing. Empty rooms amplify truth. I agreed, because I wanted to see if clarity had reached them yet, and because I needed to say one final thing, not in anger, but in completion. By the time Linda asked to meet, the house no longer felt like ours. The furniture was still there, but it already belonged to memory. Walls stripped of photographs, nail holes exposed like small, honest wounds. The realtor's lockbox hung on the front door, cold, impersonal, metallic. A quiet reminder that ownership is a temporary illusion. I arrived early. I walked through each room slowly, not sentimentally, clinically. The kitchen island where Megan once spread textbooks and cried over exam scores. The hallway where Linda had once leaned into me after arguments with David about missed child support. The master bedroom where I lay awake too many nights convincing myself patience would eventually be rewarded with respect. Patience is not the same as value. The house echoed now. Even my footsteps sounded detached. Linda came first. She stepped inside like a visitor. No makeup. No rehearsed composure. Just fatigue. The kind that comes when denial finally runs out of oxygen. Thank you for agreeing to talk, she said. I nodded. We stood in the living room facing each other. the emptiness between us more honest than any furniture ever was. "Megan's coming," she added quietly. I wasn't surprised. 3 weeks earlier, laughter had filled a restaurant room under white lilies. Now we stood under bare ceiling lights in a house about to belong to strangers. Consequences don't shout. They rearrange. Megan arrived without knocking. No confidence this time. No director's posture. No curated tone. She looked smaller. Not physically. Structurally. She glanced around the empty room, and I saw it register, the finality. "This is really happening," she murmured. "Yes," I said. Linda moved first. "We don't have to do this like enemies," she pleaded. "We can find a compromise." Compromise. An interesting word when one side has carried the weight for years. "There was already a compromise," I replied. "I stayed. I provided. I absorbed. That was the compromise." Megan stepped forward. "I didn't mean to disrespect you." "You did," I said calmly. Silence fell. She wasn't used to direct answers. "I was celebrating my father," she insisted. "That doesn't mean you didn't help." "Help?" I repeated. The word hung in the air. "I didn't help," I said. "I financed. I guided. I connected. I stayed." She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. Linda tried again. She was caught up in the moment. "No," I said. "She was honest in the moment." That's what they struggled with. Not my actions. My clarity. Megan's voice softened. "The lease situation is temporary. I can manage it. It's just harder now." "Yes. And Dad's situation." "I know," I interrupted gently. "He disappeared." Her eyes flickered. Because that was the pattern. David appeared for applause and vanished for responsibility. The promotion had been probationary. The added financial strain exposed cracks in her performance. Stress affects judgment. Confidence without foundation wavers. Her 6-month review came early. Not a termination, but a demotion of expectations. Leadership requires stability. Her supervisor had told her, according to Linda, "We need reliability." Reliability. I almost smiled at the irony. For years, I had been reliability personified. Invisible infrastructure. Emotional and financial ballast. But infrastructure is rarely thanked until it collapses. Megan stepped closer to me. "For the first time," she said carefully, "I understand what you were doing." I studied her face. Understanding born from loss is different from understanding born from gratitude. "You understand dependency," I corrected. She flinched. "I never wanted to depend on you," she said quickly. "You did," I replied. "You just didn't want to acknowledge it." Linda's eyes filled. "We should have defended you." Yes, that was the center of it. Not money, not leases, not houses. Defense. Partnership requires defense. When someone publicly diminishes your spouse and you remain silent, you choose a side. "I wasn't asking for applause," I said quietly. "I was asking not to be erased." The room felt colder. Megan's shoulders dropped. "I thought you'd always be there." "That was the mistake," I answered, because I had allowed that belief to form. I had been constant, predictable, endlessly accommodating. When something is always present, people stop evaluating its cost. Linda walked to the window, looking out at the empty driveway. "So this is it?" "Yes." "You won't reconsider?" she asked. "No." No anger. No tremor. Just no. Megan swallowed. "If I had said thank you at that brunch, it wouldn't have changed the truth," I said. "Because gratitude offered under comfort is easy. Respect offered under pressure is real." "You're choosing pride over family," Linda whispered. I shook my head slowly. "I'm choosing alignment," I said, "between what I am and how I'm treated." Megan's voice cracked slightly. "So what are we supposed to do now?" It was the same question she'd asked when the lease shifted. When dependency breaks, the first reaction is confusion. "You build independently," I said, "or you redefine what family means. But not with me." That was the moment it landed. Not anger. not revenge. Finality. The house felt enormous in its emptiness. Megan looked around again, and for a second I saw something like memory flicker behind her eyes. Late-night study sessions, holiday mornings, ordinary domestic stability. "Do you hate us?" she asked suddenly. No. That surprised her. "No," I said. "I see you." Sometimes being seen without illusion feels harsher than being hated. Linda turned back toward me. "We can still fix this." I held her gaze. "Respect doesn't appear after loss," I said slowly. "It has to exist before it." No one spoke after that. There was nothing left to negotiate. The buyer's inspection was scheduled for the next morning. Escrow already in motion. Documents awaiting signatures. Facts are steadier than feelings. Megan stepped closer one last time. "If things change." "They won't," I replied. Not because reconciliation is impossible, but because the dynamic had been exposed beyond repair. Once you understand your role in a structure, you cannot unknow it. Linda walked toward the door first. Megan followed. At the threshold, she hesitated. "For what it's worth," she said softly. "I did learn from you." I believed her. But learning after dismissal doesn't restore partnership. They left. The house swallowed the sound of the door closing. I stood alone in the empty living room and felt something unexpected. Not bitterness. Not triumph. Release. For years, I had played the role of convenient stability. The man who would always absorb impact so others could shine. But shine built on erasure is not legacy. It's illusion. The sale closed 2 weeks later. I moved to Denver. New house. Smaller. Intentional. No shared accounts. No silent negotiations. No Easter toasts waiting to correct me publicly. Sometimes I think about that brunch. The white lilies. The laughter. The precise moment clarity arrived disguised as humor. I don't resent it. I'm grateful for it. Because sometimes the only way people take you seriously is when you stand up from the table and never return. Denver feels different in the mornings. The air is thinner here. Sharper. It forces your lungs to work honestly. There's no coasting at this altitude. You either adjust or you suffocate. I chose to adjust. The house I bought is smaller than the one in Seattle. No grand foyer. No open-concept performance spaces designed for family photographs. Just clean lines. Large windows. A study that belongs only to me. When I signed the closing documents, the pen felt heavier than it should have. Ownership without negotiation. Silence without tension. It was unfamiliar at first. For weeks after the move, I woke up expecting noise. The soft friction of someone else's expectations pressing against my day. Instead, there was only stillness. No one adjusting napkins. No one waiting for me to fund stability while denying my place in it. Just me. I began new projects immediately. Consulting contracts. Advisory roles. Work that relied on my experience, not my emotional endurance. It's strange how differently people treat you when the relationship is transactional and acknowledged. Clients don't erase you publicly and then expect you to keep showing up. If they value you, they pay you. If they don't, they leave. Clean. Predictable. Respect is built into the structure. I found that refreshing. Linda called twice in the first month. The first call was tentative. "How are you settling in?" "Fine," I said. She hesitated. Then, "Megan's adjusting." Adjusting. That word again. "Is she stable?" I asked. "She's working harder," Linda admitted. "She had to downgrade the car." Of course she did. Lease restructuring had not been kind. Without my credit, the numbers shifted. Monthly payments rose. Performance pressure intensified. Applause doesn't cover overhead. "And David?" I asked. A pause. "He's dealing with his own issues." Translation. Unavailable. Patterns repeat until someone refuses to participate. The second call was different. More direct. "Do you ever think about coming back?" she asked. "No," I said. Silence stretched across state lines. "You've changed," she whispered. "No," I replied. I stopped pretending. That ended the conversation. Megan reached out once. An email. Short, measured, professional in tone, as if we were colleagues instead of family. She wrote about a campaign she had successfully salvaged after weeks of pressure. She mentioned how she applied structural discipline I had once explained to her during a late-night strategy session years ago. At the bottom, she added, "I see it differently now." I read the line 3 times. Differently is not the same as rightly. I didn't respond immediately. I waited, not to punish, to evaluate. When I did reply, it was brief. "I'm glad you're building independently." Nothing more. Because that was the boundary now. Independence. In Denver, I host small dinners occasionally. Not to perform unity. Not to curate image. Just conversations among adults who understand reciprocity. No one introduces me as background. No one edits my role to preserve comfort. The first Easter here passed quietly. I hiked alone that morning. Snow still clung to shaded edges of the trail. The city stretched below in quiet geometry. I thought about that brunch. The white lilies. The laughter. The exact moment my name dissolved into silence. I expected resentment to surface. Didn't. What surfaced instead was clarity. I had mistaken endurance for virtue. I believed that if I absorbed enough, gave enough, stayed long enough, belonging would eventually crystallize around me. But belonging cannot be purchased with sacrifice alone. It requires mutual recognition. Without it, you become infrastructure, essential, invisible, replaceable. I refused to remain infrastructure. Some evenings, I sit on my back patio and watch the light shift across the mountains. There's no applause here, no declarations, no public affirmations, and I don't miss them, because applause fades. Respect either exists or it doesn't. Megan sent another message recently, shorter this time. "I understand what you meant about respect needing to exist before loss." That line lingered. Understanding after consequence is honest. But it does not reverse time. Linda has stopped asking me to return. I suspect she finally understands that silence carries cost. That neutrality in moments of disrespect is not neutrality at all. It is alignment. People think walking away is dramatic. It isn't. Staying where you are diminished is dramatic. It requires constant performance, constant swallowing, constant negotiation of your own worth. Leaving is quiet. I didn't slam doors. I didn't shout in restaurants. I paid the bill. I signed the papers. I redirected the funds. I stood up from the table. And I did not return. Sometimes I ask myself whether I could have endured it longer. Whether one more compromise might have restored balance. But every time I revisit that brunch in my mind, I see the same image. Linda adjusting her napkin. Megan smiling as she drew a clean line around lineage. Guests laughing because they believed it was harmless. No one saw the fracture, except me. And once you see the fracture, you cannot unsee it. Denver has taught me something simple. Peace does not require applause. It requires alignment between what you give and what you receive. For years, I gave stability and received convenience. Now, I give only where I am acknowledged. There are no stepchildren here comparing me to ghosts. No wife interpreting erasure as pride. No public corrections disguised as jokes. Just altitude, clear air, and the understanding that sometimes the most decisive act of self-respect is quiet departure. Tell me, if you built a foundation others stood on, and they laughed while denying you built it, would you keep holding it up, or would you finally let them feel the weight of standing alone?